Hi there, and welcome to the Surviving and Thriving in Residency podcast. I'm Charley Lowry, your host and director of GME Relations at PracticeLink. This show is all about exploring the world of graduate and undergraduate medical education. We'll dive into the real-life experiences, successes, and challenges faced by medical students, residents, and fellows, while also highlighting valuable tools to support you, whether that's financial planning, student aid, or the many free resources provided by PracticeLink. If you're thinking about med school, currently studying, or deep into residency or fellowship, this podcast is here to offer insights and support to make your journey a bit easier than those before you. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Thriving and Surviving in Residency. I'm your host, Charley Lowry, and I'm happy to have with us Eli Greenspan from Foley Hoag. Eli advises clients on policy and legislative strategy, working with stakeholders to develop and implement effective advocacy strategies. Eli, welcome to the show. How's everything going today in Washington, D.C.?
Thanks for having me, Charley. It's a hot summer day here and a lot going on this month here in D.C.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very busy there all the time. The heat is everywhere. It's been a little brutal this summer for sure. Eli, if you would, I'm just going to let you talk a little bit about yourself, what brought you to the position you're in now, and talk a little bit more extensively on what you do.
Well, thank you. So I've been in Washington, D.C. for over 10 years now. I started my career working on Capitol Hill for a senator from New Mexico. And as a kid from Chicagoland, working for a New Mexico member was quite a unique experience. New Mexico is a very rural state. Access to healthcare is a unique challenge with a variety of different payers. There's, of course, there's the Medicaid. There's a big veteran population with the VA healthcare, and of course, Medicaid. And access to care and continuity of care is a challenge that I quickly was drawn to and understood the challenges and understood the importance of access to healthcare. And this was around the time of the ACA, the Affordable Care Act being rolled out. And I just was really drawn to how do you improve access to healthcare in a way that improves outcomes as well.
Very nice. Now, how long have you been in DC now?
About 12 years. And so I've been working at my current firm for over 5 years now. And I've been really focused on healthcare workforce shortages, addressing the physician provider pipeline, and really sort of looking at the myriad of angles around how that issue impacts our healthcare system and those in rural and vulnerable communities.
That's really great. So a little bit about PracticeLink. We are over 30 years old. We were headquartered out of Hinton, West Virginia, which is a very small, little tiny town here where the New River Gorge National Park is located. But rural healthcare is at the heart of all of us here. It's very, very important for folks like us. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some international medical graduate information that hopefully will be very helpful to some folks out there listening. Can you briefly explain what the Conrad 30 program is and how it benefits international medical graduates?
Certainly. The Conrad 30 program allows international medical graduates who have completed their U.S. residency on a J-1 visa to remain in the U.S. without fulfilling what's called the 2-year home residency return requirement. And I know that's a mouthful, but it's basically when you come here on a J-1 visa, after you've completed your residency, you're required to go back to your home country before reapplying to come back to the U.S. What the Conrad program does, it has another name. It's called the J-1 Visa Waiver Program, which means it waives that home return requirement if you're willing to serve in a health professional shortage area or a medically underserved area for 3 years.
So the program overall, it's going to help with the shortage that you're talking about in the underserved communities. That's the goal of it?
So the program's been around for 30 years, and it was started because there was a recognition that large parts of the country struggled to recruit and retain physicians. And so how do you create an incentive for physicians to go to these places? There's student loan repayment and there's other things like that, but what gets directly at the issue? And how can we direct supply towards that demand? And this program was born with that in mind, to incentivize international medical graduates, foreign trained medical students that are coming here to further their education, that want to continue practicing medicine in the U.S., to go to those areas with persistent shortages.
That sounds incredible. I see just so many benefits even outside of the physician shortages. A lot of rural areas, I imagine it would just be hard attracting international residents to come there, just on shortage of maybe other international groups that they may associate with, or things to do that they're just used to, maybe bigger cities and things like that. So I can see a lot of benefits for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that gets at the heart of how you attract folks to go to those communities. It's not just that there's a job there. The opportunity to continue practicing medicine is high on the list, but being an economic driver in your community, having the community support to raise your family there, thinking long term. This is something that communities all across the country have started to figure out as more and more of these IMGs look for these opportunities.
So Congress authorized this program and is the only one that can make major updates to it. Do you know if they are considering any changes to it currently?
They are. And so Congress hasn't made changes to this program in over 10 years. The most recent notable change that came for this program, it used to be the Conrad 20 program. And in the early 2000s, there was increased demand for the program, and they increased the number of slots to 30. And that 30 means that each state in the country can recommend 30 waivers per cycle. So it doesn't matter if you're California or Vermont, you get 30 slots each cycle to recruit physicians. And so in the last 15 or so years, there's been a lot of changes to how our immigration system works, how practicing medicine works. And so what Congress is considering right now is a update to the bill, which would, one, clarify the incentives, both for the employers and for physicians, to make the program more workable in today's climate and attractive to both parties, because there are thousands of IMGs in medical residency training right now. We invest tax dollars into that education. There should be a clear path to continuing practicing medicine here in places that struggle to recruit physicians.
So do you think it will change as far as the number per state would be based on, like California would have more than West Virginia, something like that?
There is a accelerator in the bill, and there's been other discussions about how to increase the number of slots. It's an important component of how do we make it more workable in smaller states that maybe don't recruit as well. But there are other pathways that are opening that would augment the 30 slots that each state get. And that's something that a lot of stakeholders are working on to see through, to make sure that there's more opportunities beyond just the state program to enter medical training after residency.
How does the Conrad 30 waiver process work, and what are key steps that an international medical graduate should be aware of?
So international medical graduate, they're entering their last year of training. They're likely looking for that job opportunity. That is really the first step for the resident, is securing a job opportunity. And most, if not all, employers are making it very clear that they are open to J1 recipients. They are committed to seeing them through that process. But if you're an IMG and you're looking at opportunities, that's the first check that you want to see, is that your employer is committed to that process. Because once you go through all the steps of lining up your employment, that's really when the process begins. Because around September or October, if you're applying for a state program, the cycle opens up for you to apply for that waiver. And it is a competitive process. Each state has varying levels of competitiveness. And then once you submit your waiver, you have to wait a few months before you get the thumbs up or thumbs down that you received that waiver from that state. Then that next phase will be the state recommends your waiver to the Department of State, and the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, for final approval. And this process can take 7 to 10 months, give or take. So when you begin that process, upon completing your residency around this time over the summer, by the following spring or summer, you will have been able to begin that employment on your J1 waiver. And not to overly complicate the process, but then you transition from your J1 to your H1B visa, which is your employment-sponsored visa, to remain in the program.
Just a little plug for PracticeLink here. PracticeLink is an online job board. One of the filters is immigration assistance. So if you are J1 and you are looking for a position, you can go to PracticeLink.com. You can search open positions throughout the country, put in the visa type that you are filtering, and you will only get those facilities that sponsor the J1 visa. So it takes a lot of that work out of it for you.
That's great. I mean, especially because there's a lot of steps that the employer will cover along that way, making sure that they're in a health professional shortage area or medically underserved area, that they have certain requirements taken care of. So that's a great resource for those in this situation.
Do you have any idea how they base that medical underserved community, or any guidelines on that, or what is that based on?
So the health professional shortage area scoring weighs a number of factors for those communities. It's a score of up to 25. The higher the score, the more severity. So there's something called the HHS Exchange Visitor Program, which is a nationwide J1 waiver program operated by HHS for primary care, which requires that entities seeking a waiver be in a HPSA score of 7 or higher. A lot of states abide by that scoring, but each state kind of operates their own program differently.
So is the program open to all providers, or is it just primary care? Specialty providers can also pursue this.
That's correct. And that's actually one of the changes that were made to the program in the life cycle of this program. Initially, this was just primary care, or really primarily focused on the primary care shortage. And flexibility was given to states to offer specialty slots to specialty providers, and also providers that are in a urban setting, but serving patients in underserved areas. So there's flexibility around meeting people where they're at and making sure that a specialty provider is in a community where he can or she can survive long term, versus being somewhere where they may not have the volume of care in a especially rural place for their type of specialty.
Do you want to know when to do what in your job search? First Practice, PracticeLink's resident and fellow career guide, teaches you 10 easy-to-follow steps every prospective physician needs to find their dream practice. And best of all, it's completely free at firstpractice.com. Becoming a physician is hard. Finding a job doesn't have to be. Thank you for listening. Now we'll return to the podcast.
So do you see higher numbers coming from certain countries? This is open to any country, I assume. There's no restrictions on that end either from the incoming applicants.
Yeah, that's right. I think the majority, or a large percentage, come from India and China. You see that a lot. But you talk to people that are interacting with the program, and you'll hear they've got applicants from all over the world. From Eastern Europe and places like Poland. You'll see people from Canada that are pursuing this program, countries in Africa that medical residents, they do their initial training and then they seek opportunities here. I think that's a very encouraging element of the program, is that it's not just one or two countries. There are dozens of countries that have fantastic medical training, and then some pursue training here to either go back to their home country or continue to practice medicine here in places that they are really needed.
I always wonder that with international medical graduates, how many who come with the intention of maybe going back home to practice end up staying here after they're finished with residency and not going back.
That's a really great point, because what I tell a lot of lawmakers and policymakers about why we need to strengthen this program, it's because the most heavily recruited provider is a U.S. trained physician. And that doesn't mean they have to be from here. It means that wherever they come from to do medical training, being a U.S. trained physician is a very sought after applicant, and countries all over the world recruit them. And those physicians, especially IMGs, they are incentivized to go to areas that really struggle with recruitment. And so it's a no-brainer of an opportunity to make those pathways clearer.
So let me ask you this. If you were a student, say maybe a Caribbean student at an international medical school, and you were doing your medical school rotations in the United States at facilities across the country, which is very common, does that give you a leg up or no in this application process once you're finished with residency, if you actually did some of your clinicals during medical school in the United States?
I absolutely think it makes you an attractive target for employment here, just to have a diversity of training in different parts of the country and different specialties, understanding the sort of the bedside cadence. I mean, these are things that are very typical in a job search process that employers are looking for. So to have that type of experience, whether it's in a hospital setting or primary care, it is a very compelling part of the training.
How would an international medical graduate identify and apply for Conrad 30 positions? What exactly should they look for in a potential employer?
I really think the initial thing you should look for is that your employer is committed to your J1 waiver, making sure you have the H-1B visa ultimately, and then long term that they're committed to your success in your career, whatever you want that to look like. You know, this program is designed to be a 3-year obligation, but many employers look at this and say, we're thinking much bigger than that. We're thinking long term. We want this physician to be there and to own this practice and to take ownership of the practice in the sense of, like, you're going to be a pillar in the community, especially on the primary care side where we're seeing increasing shortages and we're struggling to backfill in a lot of rural and underserved places. I think if you're sitting there thinking about a primary care career in the United States, looking for employers that are committed to your long-term success and stability is really a fundamental part of your search.
I think rural areas are sometimes just so overlooked. And, you know, West Virginia is a great example. From the small town where I was raised in West Virginia, there is a national park there. There is skiing, great skiing. There's whitewater rafting. There's hiking. There's everything that an outdoor enthusiast would absolutely love: photography, outdoor photography, and just so many things that it offers. And then I also think the community itself, sometimes with the smaller rural communities, you really have that care and concern. I think a lot of patients are very appreciative to have a great physician come into a rural community. And I think that's it. That's just a lot of things that are overlooked that you don't really get into until you're there and then you fall in love with it.
Mm-hmm. And if we can just talk about West Virginia for a second, some of the best whitewater rafting east of the Mississippi River. And that's a big part of the recruitment process for employers is we're going to show you where you'll be working and what the practice is like and what the community profile is like. But there's so much more to it, to making sure that these IMGs and their families are excited about this opportunity, because for many candidates, it's so much more than the individual. These are highly trained individuals. They've maybe spent some time in their home country practicing or in another country. Their journeys are unique, and you have to be able to meet them where they're at and their family and what their needs are beyond their career.
How about common misconceptions about the program or common misconceptions about working as an IMG in the U.S.?
So a common misconception, which we've talked about a little bit, is that the program is only for primary care physicians. It is not. It is also for specialists to apply. Another misconception is that it is just a state-run program and that each state has their own program. There are things called regional commissions. There's one that covers a large swath, if not all of West Virginia, called the Appalachian Regional Commission. And these regional commissions, I think there are 4 that currently operate a Conrad program. they can augment the number of waivers that states can provide in those regions. And so just a little bit on these regional commissions, because they're very, very cool, is that they are designed to promote economic activity in their jurisdictions. And so for the Appalachian Regional Commission, it stretches all the way from like southern New York, all the way down past Kentucky into Georgia. They look at the J1 program as a way to improve primary care access in communities, because what we've talked about and what many realize is that you place a physician in a community that needs them, they're going to employ support staff, they're going to employ tech-related support, and they support those communities. And so as you explore opportunities in different states, there are several of these regional commissions that have their own timelines and their own processes that are really attractive opportunities. You know, if you're looking in West Virginia and West Virginia routinely fills all 30 of its slots, you can look at a regional commission program like the Appalachian Regional Commission and still pursue that waiver that you're hoping to get in that community. And it's often overlooked as folks try to navigate these programs.
It's interesting. What about tracking? Like over the years, like for example, for West Virginia, what's the tracking look like on that for the folks that have gone through the program, and how many stay, how many leave, things like that?
I think most states track this, and some states put out reports to show it. What I've seen from the tracking is that the overwhelming majority of these physicians stay beyond the 3-year commitment. So that means that they have a great job opportunity, they're clearly needed, and they are part of a growing team. And that just speaks to what employers know. The reality is for these physicians in many communities across the country, I mean, these are great places to live and raise families. A good career is a blessing. And that's what is offered to a lot of IMGs looking at Conrad opportunities, because there is such a need and there are so many resources put into recruitment and retention that these physicians that are willing to practice and serve there and work hard and do all those things to enter into their careers here, employers are really trying to keep them and make sure that they're happy and see that future. And so that's a very compelling selling point of why you make this program stronger, is because retention of physicians in these places that struggle to recruit is higher with IMGs.
And I'm sure cost of living factors in a lot too. I think that living in a place like Boston compared to living in a rural community in West Virginia, your cost of living is going to be very significantly different between the two places.
That's exactly right. And especially in primary care, which is a harder specialty to be in these days. I mean, the cost of living is a huge factor for a lot of this.
So how about the state-specific programs with the Conrad 30? What should IMGs consider when choosing where to apply?
The first thing for an IMG is find the employer that you want to work for and a place that you want to work in. States have different application timelines. Some states move more quickly than others in reviewing and processing. There's nuances to how states review applications. In many states, you used to have to stand outside the office on October 1 to get your application submitted. A lot of states have moved to, we're going to accept waiver applications through a certain date and then review them and weigh them and decide from there. So there's about 20 to 25 states that fill all their slots every year. In those states, you should consider the practice you're looking at, how high of a need there is, and if your waiver application will be competitive. And your potential employer can tell you that. Others can sort of speak to that challenge. But I think because of the options beyond the state-based programs, there's those regional commissions. If you're in primary care, there's the HHS program, which has a bit more flexibility in their application timeline. It's really just feeling good about your opportunity and the career trajectory of that potential employer, because you'll be able to pursue that opportunity in a competitive state, whether it's competitive or not.
So, of course, in my mind, I'm thinking New York, California, maybe Massachusetts, probably Northern Virginia area are probably all the hotspots.
You'd be surprised. I think West Virginia routinely uses all 30 of its slots. A lot of Midwest states use all 30 of their slots. I mean, what we've seen is that employers in these states, big and small, tap into this. What we see with residents, a lot of them like where they are training, that it's familiar to them, and they stay nearby. So if you're practicing in the Mid-Atlantic area or in your residency and you're in the Mid-Atlantic, you're probably looking at opportunities in that area. So you see North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and some spillover to like Tennessee and Kentucky. They're routinely using all their slots in addition to those regional commission slots that are around there too. And that isn't meant to be intimidating because it sounds like exceptionally competitive, but I know there's lots of states that will work with applicants and employers to say, we're going to refer you to this regional commission or to HHS because that's a more compelling path than our current state opportunity.
At PracticeLink, we believe your physician job search should be simple, supportive, and stress-free. That's why creating an account has always been and will always be completely free for physicians. Create your free account today at PracticeLink.com to start receiving your latest and most exclusive job opportunities directly to your inbox.
So how about success stories? Can you share any stories or lessons learned from your interactions with IMGs or from colleagues who have navigated this process?
Absolutely. And I think there's countless success stories with this program. And it's just trying to put faces to these issues because IMGs are all over the country. They've practiced for decades here. They've had kids here that have gone on to practice medicine or have done incredible things. And those are success stories of our immigration and IMG pathways. One of the groups that I've worked with for a number of years, a number of their IMGs who came in through this program and are practicing in rural Iowa and Missouri and Illinois. One of them in particular recently got his green card and has been able to grow his primary care practice in the area. He spent a number of years in this area, so he knows it as well as anybody. And that's success right there. He's spent over a decade in rural Missouri. He's grown his practice beyond his specialty and been able to hire more people. And he is directly benefiting his community in rural Missouri. This person also testified on Capitol Hill about his story, sort of bringing light to not just the challenges IMGs face throughout their process, but also the potential success that comes when you offer this pathway and see it through like he has. I worked with another IMG, a great guy. He was working at a VA in Illinois, and the opportunity to be serving veterans and working at a VA hospital for a long period of time. I mean, these are just two of many examples of providers that go to places that struggle to recruit, that provide care and provide access to people who would otherwise have to travel significantly longer distances for care. What I talk about with employers that are curious about the program and also with IMGs that are interested in pursuing it is that one physician makes a difference. And there's thousands of IMGs in their residency program right now. And each one has potential to transform care in these places that they are so desperately needed.
That's so great. There's so much talk around international medical graduates coming in, and if they are practicing in their home country, maybe being able to step out of doing a residency in the United States. What have you heard about that? And are there states doing that now? Any information on where information could be found on that?
So this is an issue that has a lot of momentum behind it. And I've talked with some of the groups, and I think there are over a dozen states that have put forward legislation that would create a provisional license pathway for what I believe are being called internationally trained physicians. So the slight distinction with an IMG perhaps, but this is a pathway for foreign trained medical graduates who've been practicing medicine or have a license in their home country that is still like active, and they've taken their US MLE exams or they went to a accredited university There's a number of steps that they have to satisfy to be eligible for a provisional license. And then each state has taken a different approach to provider eligibility and other timelines for that provisional license. There's a few things that I think about this proposal. One is it speaks to the overwhelming need that states see, that communities see for providers, that the health workforce shortage is at such a crisis level that we are trying to attract physicians from all walks of life to come to communities that they're desperately needed in. The other side of this is ensuring that states have some parity between each other around the level of training and the active sort of license that these providers may have. A lot of IMGs come and do their residency after practicing for many years. And so is there a certainty that the training that their U.S. medical residency training, is there equivalency there that certain internationally trained physicians can bypass the residency to practice here? There's a lot of movement behind this, a lot of IMGs that are speaking to it, and you have to respect that view and push because they see it as well as anybody about the shortages and the need and the desire to practice here. There's a lot of challenges that are still being sorted out by states with this model, but there's no silver bullet here. This is really, for years, this is an all-hands-on-deck effort to address health workforce shortages. And IMGs, foreign-trained physicians, are integral to the solution because they're so ingrained in rural and underserved areas.
Yes, totally agree with that. I think that it's just a natural thing to follow suit because it has happened with nursing and with other healthcare fields where they have had to look at some equivalency in some other countries' graduates to allow some nurses to come into the country and practice. And they found the curriculum to be very similar or equivalent. And so it's a natural progression, I think. And the overall value of an IMG is just amazing. Especially, again, coming from West Virginia, I see it. I have met so many in my journey and just an incredible thing for us to be able to help them out. So what about resources or support systems? What's available to help IMGs transition into practicing medicine in the U.S.?
Well, I think from the start, you're working with the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates, ECFMG. They sponsor the J1 program. They'll have a number of resources to help navigate those early days and steps to ensure success. As you get further into your residency training and you identify your field of medicine, what you're going to be practicing in, there's national specialty groups, trade groups that can help to provide resources and direction. Of course, PracticeLink and others that have great resources to help understand what you should be looking for as you pursue these opportunities. But like anything else, there's networking, there's mentoring, working with those at your academic institution to help answer those questions that you really glean the most insight from those that have that experience. It speaks to why the value of an IMG coming to a rural community in West Virginia improves the likelihood that another one will behind them because of success breeds more success.
That's true. And it's a very small community. I always say the medical community is a lot smaller than you think, and reaching out to people and just being open and talking to them, it's amazing some of the information you can gather and get from colleagues. So anything else that you want to share today on the podcast before we wrap things up?
I think what we've been talking about through this around making the program better and more workable, those that are listening and that work in this space know this program is a slam dunk, know that IMGs are vital to the U.S. healthcare system, to rural and underserved communities. And those are the types of stories that me and a lot of folks are trying to bring forward to drive home just how invaluable IMGs and providers are in communities across the country. The health workforce shortage crisis, there's a number of solutions. And this is one that will help to rapidly address those particularly acute shortages. And so get involved and not just serve patients, but be a good steward for health providers and the medical field.
Any links or anything you want to share there on that side?
You can check me out at Foley Hoag. I am available and happy to be a resource or chat with anyone on this topic. I could rattle off a lot of resources, but careful what you wish for.
You guys have a great website. You really do. So we'll wrap it up. And on behalf of myself and PracticeLink, we truly thank you, Eli, for being a guest on our podcast today. For our listeners, please feel free to reach out with any questions or feedback about anything we covered today. You can email me at charles.lowry@practicelink.com. If you wish to receive more information about PracticeLink, please visit our website at www.practicelink.com. My name is Charley Lowry, and I thank you for listening to today's episode.